two nations born from the same land. But from day one, they were destined to collide. Join me as I dive into the complex history of India's 75-year rivalry with Pakistan and explore whether this tension could really lead to a Third World War. 75 years ago, the last British viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, cut the Gordian knot of imperial rule in the Indian subcontinent by drawing a line on a map. But his tidy partition of Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan has been anything but neat. For 7 decades, South Asia's security has hinged on this one peninsula, Jammu and Kashmir, which neither side wanted to accept as their loss. Now called the Line of Control or LOC, this shaky armistice line has become the world's most militarized border. In fact, if you add up the number of troops India and Pakistan have deployed along the LOC, it comes out to almost half of all their active personnel. All told, there are roughly 1.6 million soldiers guarding the line with over 800 tanks, not to mention anti-tank mines and an arsenal of heavy weapons. Just beyond the line of control are hundreds of bunkers, trenches, and watchtowers silently surveying no man's land. Trenches are dug and barbed wire entanglement reigns, creating what some call an unofficial buffer zone. In the no man's land, artillery shells routinely crash into the desolate landscape and tracer bullets streak through the twilight. If that sounds like the setting for a horror movie, then this part of Kashmir, aptly named the Valley of Death, certainly fits the bill. Behind these grim scenes lie decades of distrust, betrayals, and cross-border conflicts. But why can't these neighbors find common ground? To understand how India and Pakistan went from shared independence to bitter rivals, we need to go back to the beginning. As British colonialism tightened its grip on the subcontinent in the late 19th century, a growing movement for independence began to take shape. But there was a major hurdle to overcome. The sheer diversity of the Indian subcontinent posed a huge challenge to any vision of self-rule. At the time, the subcontinent was home to many different regions and identities. So how could Britain ensure control over such a vast and varied territory? Their solution was divide and conquer. By pitting regions against each other, Britain was able to prevent any large-scale rebellion. They exacerbated existing religious and cultural differences, exacerbating the divide between Hindus and Muslims and granting princely states a degree of autonomy, so long as they remained allied with the crown. Now fast forward to 1947. With World War II raging, Britain's hold on India was tenuous at best. Mounting pressure both at home and abroad forced them to finally cede power, but not without stipulations. The transfer of power was overseen by Lord Mountbatten. His plan involved the partition of India into several independent states. But that plan faced resistance from Indian leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who advocated for a united, independent India. Despite this opposition, Mountbatten pressed forward with the partition. According to him, the subcontinent couldn't function as one state without a clear majority of either religion. And he believed that a separate state for Muslims was necessary to protect their interests. So in August of 1947, India and Pakistan were born. Unfortunately, this process wasn't smooth by any means. There was mass displacement of people, horrific instances of communal violence, and a struggle for recognition among the new nations and the former princely states. Even today, the human toll of that upheaval continues to resonate. Some 14 to 18 million people had to migrate across newly drawn borders. This resulted in one of the largest mass migrations in human history, with many fleeing violence and uncertainty in their homeland. And while the immediate aftermath of partition was marked by chaos and bloodshed, the true complexities of India and Pakistan's relationship soon came to light. The relationship between India and Pakistan became increasingly strained as both nations sought to assert their dominance in the region. The struggle for Kashmir was a major point of contention, which we'll get into later. As the Cold War intensified, the rivalry took on a new dimension. Both India and Pakistan aligned themselves with different superpowers, with India leaning towards non-alignment, but ultimately forging closer ties with the Soviet Union and Pakistan forming a close partnership with the United States. This external involvement further complicated the situation, turning what started as a bilateral dispute into a proxy conflict. The rivalry became entrenched and efforts at reconciliation fell apart. Successive generations grew up with tales of hostility and mistrust passed down from their parents who lived through partition. Even today, textbooks in both countries perpetuate narratives that demonize the other side. The result is a vicious cycle where suspicion and antagonism continue unabated. But let's delve deeper into the root cause of India and Pakistan's enmity, the dispute over Kashmir. The contested region lies at the heart of India and Pakistan's fraught relationship. But understanding this conflict requires us to rewind once again, this time to 1947. Prior to independence, Kashmir was ruled by an autocratic dynasty. But when the subcontinent was split, the region's fate hung in the balance. As the region's Hindu ruler considered joining India, Pakistani proxies launched an invasion. Caught in the crossfire were the region's Muslim majority. Seeking to protect its citizens, India intervened, and the following year, the United Nations called for a plebiscite to determine Kashmir's future. But as India and Pakistan poured resources into building armies, the political goalposts kept moving. Now, over 75 years later, neither side budges. Each claims sovereignty over all of Kashmir, fueling the longest-running territorial dispute in modern history. What makes this conflict particularly dangerous is the role of weaponization. Pakistan supports various militant groups that launch attacks in Kashmir, while India responds with military crackdowns, creating a vicious feedback loop of violence. The disputed region remains largely shut off from the outside world, with little oversight to prevent abuses. Both sides accuse each other of committing atrocities, deepening the rift. The current standoff feels like an intractable mess. But the reality is the conflict over Kashmir has claimed an estimated 70,000 lives since the 1980s. Even after dozens of ceasefires, neither side is willing to compromise. But the Kashmir conflict isn't the only thorn in India and Pakistan's relationship. Cross-border terrorism is another contentious issue. Pakistan's support for militant groups operating in Kashmir has been a consistent source of friction. India accuses Pakistan of harboring terrorists on its soil, while Pakistan denies these allegations. Tensions over cross-border terrorism have escalated in recent years, leading to tit-for-tat strikes and counter-strikes. India eased 2016 surgical strike across the line of control in response to an attack in Kashmir, and the 2019 Balakot airstrike were aimed at targeting militant infrastructure in Pakistan, while Pakistan retaliated with missile strikes of its own. These escalations demonstrate how close India and Pakistan have come to direct military conflict. Then there's the matter of water rights, particularly concerning the Indus Water Treaty of 1960. This agreement divided the 6 shared rivers among the two countries. But disputes over interpretations and new infrastructure projects continue to arise, threatening to strain relations further. Another flashpoint in India and Pakistan's relationship is the disputed maritime boundary in the Arabian Sea. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea provides for exclusive economic zones around countries' coasts, but neither country agrees on where the maritime boundary should be drawn, leaving it an ambiguous gray area. This ambiguity has allowed both sides to claim vast reserves of oil and gas in the region, heightening tensions. To make matters worse, the actions of non-state actors like militant groups add another layer of complexity to this conflict. Attacks from groups like the Baluchistan Liberation Army threaten to spill over into neighboring countries, drawing in larger powers and complicating diplomatic efforts. Now, let's turn to a pressing concern: the nuclear threat. Both India and Pakistan possess nuclear weapons, adding a terrifying dimension to their rivalry. Accidental launches, technical malfunctions, or miscalculations could have catastrophic consequences. The stakes have never been higher. So what's the possibility of this conflict escalating into a large-scale war? Well, the answer depends on several factors. India's military doctrine emphasizes restraint and dehyphenation, meaning they view Pakistan's nuclear arsenal as separate from its conventional forces. However, Pakistan's policy is less clear-cut, raising concerns about possible nuclear escalation. One alarming scenario involves non-state actors like militant groups acquiring nuclear material or weapons. Such a development would have grave implications. Fortunately, there's no evidence to suggest that such groups have access to nuclear assets. Nevertheless, the risk remains a troubling possibility. Another concern is the potential for miscommunication or miscalculation. Both sides maintain a significant military presence along the line of control, increasing the risk of accidental clashes. Any miscalculation could spiral out of control, drawing in nuclear forces. So what can we do to prevent things from getting out of hand? Diplomacy and dialogue are crucial to resolving this long-standing conflict. International organizations like the United Nations play a vital role in mediating talks and seeking peaceful resolutions. But perhaps the most important step is for India and Pakistan to find common ground, build trust, and move towards a lasting peace agreement. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time on Chrono Alchemist.